Hey guys, welcome back to more HOA stories. What would you do if you moved into a new neighborhood and an HOA Karen tells you are not allowed to wash your truck on your own property? Let's dive right into the video. And the title story starts like this. So I'm a young new homeowner in a suburb who works as a contractor for multiple companies. I moved to the neighborhood relatively recently, and since then it has been an absolute parody of what I thought life here was gonna be. For a bit of relative context, I have a truck that I drive around for work. It's a pretty nice model, and I've always had it in my driveway where I can just get up and get right in without having to switch vehicles at work. This also makes it much easier to clean, which we'll talk about in a second. Also, I have a legit Karen in my neighborhood. When I moved here, I was aware that there was an HOA system, and honestly, I was completely fine with it. I had one in my last neighborhood and we never had any issues. However, there's a problem. Karen is an HOA member, and it is as if her very soul is in that seat. She always parades around the neighborhood like some kind of queen, surveying her subjects. It drives some of my older neighbors crazy, especially when she gets really close to trespassing, but knows exactly where to stop. She is one of those people. She is usually also wearing a seemingly self-made dark uniform that says HOA Enforcement Officer on the back. She seems incredibly proud of her job. I have also very frequently been reminded that she is a proud board member of the HOA and is not afraid to use her connections to back her up. The same went for her husband, a real estate developer who also supposedly had connections with the city. Do I know the nature of those connections? No, and I never will. The gist of these characters I live next to is that they love to make threats and talk down to people whenever possible. Luckily, due to my job, I did not have to interact with either of them much. Sure, I heard of their tales from my neighbors, but I never felt threatened. I felt too young to be a target for them, and they seemed to go after people that I didn't know, so I was still under the impression that these were just stories being played up for the thrill of it. Well, I was very wrong. After a particularly long trip, I decided that the truck was dirty and enough to motivate me to finally wash it. I don't really care for the gas station car washes, so I prefer to do it myself in the driveway. Before now, I've never even thought about how my neighbors felt about it because, well, they were normal people who minded their own business. Not Karen though, no, this was an action that offended the HOA gods apparently. She approached my house like he had just witnessed me commit the most heinous crime imaginable and was then gonna be the hero. I could see her from across the street the whole way as she dramatically strutted over, but the whole time I was just in denial and hoped that she would eventually turn away. She did not though. I watched as she stepped over the thinnest stream of water coming down the driveway like it was acid and then stormed up to me. I was gonna ask her what was going on, but she did not even let me get a word in. According to her, washing my truck in my driveway was against HOA rules and could get me in trouble if I didn't stop. I was obviously very confused as I was confident that was not a thing, especially since she could not answer me when I asked her where that was in the handbook. I offered to go get mine to show her, but she just kept yelling about how she was an officer and did not want to use her connections to ruin my chance of getting off easy. From the way she said that, it sounded like she had a gang on her side, and even though she was a petite, middle-aged woman living in a calm suburb. She then started taking pictures of my car and screaming about property values that I was ruining. And a $500 fine, as if that was some magic phrase that would get me to obey her. Before long though, she realized that I was not falling for her BS and decided to take bigger measures. I just kept washing my car and ignoring her, but apparently I ignored her too well because the next thing I knew, she told me that she had called the cops because of a so-called dangerous situation. I did not want to believe it, but she was confident enough that I realized she was not bluffing. Well, soon enough though, the cops showed up. I was embarrassed beyond belief, even though none of this was my fault. I have a respect for the cops around here because of their high reputation and low crime rate, and here they were wasting an afternoon with a fake call. So they got out of the car, obviously confused to see two normal-looking people in the driveway with no sign of conflict other than Karen's pissed-off face. They uncomfortably asked about the call and if either of us could elaborate what it was for, and sure enough, Karen had a whole story at the ready. She talked in great detail about how the chemicals I was using, normal soap, to wash my car, were toxic and would cause harmful runoff and endanger the many children who lived in the neighborhood. About 3 times during that simple statement that was dragged out into a 5-minute lecture, she mentioned her role as an HOA enforcement officer and that she called the police because of her civic duty to her neighbors. Her performance was not exactly convincing, and luckily the cops agreed. They explained the seriousness of a non-emergency call and that we needed to find a better solution to this disagreement, and as far as her statement about the toxic runoff, there was a sewer literally right next to my house where all the water was going, so it was highly unlikely that children would be anywhere near it, even if it were using straight up poison. Karen tried to get another word in, but the other cop explained that she was already on thin ice because of the call and did not need to make it worse for herself. They left shortly after, and I looked at her with a smirk and just kept washing my car. It was such a cleansing moment to hear her walk away. By the way, nice wordplay, taking her cloud of anger with her. Honestly, it could have ended there and it would be a satisfying story, but of course, as we all know, Karens are durable. If there's a way they can make something bigger than it is instead of accepting defeat, they will find a way to do it, and find one she did. The next day I woke up to a shiny truck and a note on my door. Printed in bold letters was a fine notice for $2,000 that would need to be paid in the next 30 days to the HOA unless I wanted to risk the threat of eviction. Now, in the moment it was scary, but looking back it had to be the fakest note I've ever seen. It was straight out of a 4-panel comic or something, no dates, no signature other than HOA enforcement officer. Nothing that looked professional enough to take seriously. I took the note inside and decided to do some digging on the actual HOA rules that the HOA was enforcing with this kind of thing. If Karen could not even give me a general idea of the rule I was breaking, and even law enforcement did not see an issue with it, well, this was something I needed to clear up before she went after anyone else. I hate the idea that she found someone desperate enough to actually give her money to shut her up, and well, unfortunately, I soon discovered just that. Online, I found a string of conversations within their neighborhood Facebook group that were about the fine notices on their front doors, and people in the comments had to reassure the homeowner that it was probably just a scam. Now I was actually pissed. I spent probably a good few hours finding out everything I could about the HOA, Karen, and her husband. And not only did I find out that proper fine procedures are not allowed, but Karen's husband had been trying to buy some of the surrounding houses below market value. This also tied into their connection to the HOA, which from what I learned, Karen was never officially elected to be a part of, something all of the neighbors had to be. I found that out while trying to get some background on their family and to see just how many times they had been pulling this stunt. It was much more than I expected to find, and my heart was racing now that my hands were full of blatant evidence of fraud. I went to the next HOA meeting that weekend. There were not that many people there, but what mattered was that the whole board was there. Karen was not happy to see me, but I was overjoyed that she would be there for her position's execution. I had to wait a few minutes until it was my turn to ask my question, and I was absolutely savoring the moment the entire way up to the front of the room. Karen was also a bit fidgety when she saw me approach the board. I did not hesitate to spill my guts about everything. I explained the first situation about the truck and her calling the cops for no good reason, and quickly dove into the grittier stuff. Her husband's market schemes, the fake fine notices, potential mail fraud, extortion charges, just to name a few. I also explained how there were no enforcement officers in this HOA, so she was actively lying to people to try to sound more threatening. The whole time, I saw Karen slowly slump down in her seat. I had printed out as much documented evidence as my cheap printer would let me, and it was enough to get a few copies of pretty much everything to the other board members. I figured Karen did not need one, she knew none of it was real. As one last hit, I showed that she was never elected to the board and that it was shameful that she has been allowed to run the neighborhood this way, especially when we are paying for the HOA to help us and not control us. Finally, Karen tried to defend herself by saying how insane I was to say that and how she had done nothing but good for me until I got into legal trouble, but the board stopped her. They explained that she was going to be suspended while they investigated my claims and then dismissed everyone else. I did not care to stick around to see what she had to say to me, if she was going to, that is. I did not care about her whining or her fake apologies I was sure to expect, I just wanted this to be over. Like I said, I've got a full-time tiring job and it shouldn't have been my responsibility to rat out a corrupt HOA member and her husband. The next week though, I got a letter. It was a handwritten apology from a board member who thanked me for bringing the issue of Karen to light, who they have permanently removed from the board now. They explained how everyone in the neighborhood deserves full transparency about the things the HOA does and does not enforce, and so everyone who had an issue with Karen in the past would receive a letter like mine to make sure no one is still being left in the dark. I wanted to be ecstatic, but really, I was too tired. I settled for being relaxed and just had a beer on my back porch instead. It was about as bitter as she was, but it at least did not give me a headache and I could sleep in peace afterwards. And yeah guys, if you still enjoy the HOA stories, please don't forget to like the video, because that helps me tremendously when it comes to the YouTube algorithm that is currently seriously screwed up because of all the AI channels pumping out like 20 videos per channel per day, so real voice creators need your support more than ever. Thank you so much. The next one is a petty revenge story that you don't want to miss. It is titled, "Won't Let Me Go Home Sick? Well, I will see you in 30 days when I pick up my cancer meds." Although I did not have control over how this revenge played out, I still smile when I recount this story and thought it would fit here. So in 2010 I worked at a corner drugstore as a department lead. Back when those were relevant, I was 21 and I did the bare minimum, and I hated working Sundays, which were my Fridays. I'll be the first to admit that I could have been a better employee, but I knew this would not be my career and I was just coasting until I graduated. Well, Sunday made 2 rolls around and I felt awful. I'd already not been feeling great the whole time. That Friday though, I was a bit under the weather. When Saturday came around, I felt pretty okay, but then Sunday hit like a sack of bricks. About 2 hours into my shift, I asked my manager Ryan if I could go home. The guys in management despised me, so I was not surprised when this particular manager snarkily responded with, "You need to get someone to come in and finish your shift." By the way, to edit, this was not policy, he was just being an ass about it because he didn't like me. Yeah, fine, no problem. I called one of my coworkers and she came in for me. My boyfriend at the time was working at a hotel down the street. We shared a car, so I went to his hotel to sleep until he got off work. I slept in the lobby for 9 hours straight. We made it home and I started coughing up blood. My boyfriend forced me to the ER that night. I was diagnosed with strep and admitted to the hospital. That Monday the 3rd, one of the nurses informed me that I would be in the hospital for at least a week, so I called my store to let them know. The manager I spoke with, Brad, hated me more than anyone else at that store. I told him the news. "Brad, you will be out for a week for strep?" Me, "Yeah, do you want to talk to the nurse? She's right here." Brad, "No, we will see when you get back." He was clearly irritated by the news, but there was nothing that I could do. What I hadn't told him though, as I didn't know at that time, is that I was admitted because the hospital suspected I had something much worse. I was visited by a doctor on Monday who explained that he would like to perform a bone marrow biopsy. I had no idea what that was or why he would want to do one, except that my blood counts looked weird. I had the procedure done and continued recovering from strep. Tuesday, May 4th comes, and the doctor from the day before pays me another visit. "OP, we got the results of your B&B back. You have an aggressive form of leukemia that requires immediate treatment. We will be sending you to a hospital in the big city to start chemo tonight." My world was turned upside down. I called my best friends, all of whom I worked with, and invited them to the hospital to share the news. One of my friends had a shift that afternoon and broke the news to the store. OP has cancer. I spent 28 arduous days in the hospital fighting for my life. My mom had visited my store a few times during my hospital stay and talked with my store manager, letting her know what was going on. My store manager was very understanding and supportive. The other managers never said a word to me, my mom, or my friends about the situation. When I finally got out of the hospital, I went to my old store to pick up my maintenance cancer medicine. As I made my way back towards the pharmacy, bruised, bald, and with a bright purple PICC line sticking out of my arm, I turned down aisle 10, and who do I see? Ryan stocking vitamins. "Hi Ryan," I gleefully shouted. The look on his face was priceless. "Oh my god, OP, are you okay? How are you feeling?" "I'm great now, thank you. It's a good thing I left early that Sunday and ended up in the hospital, so they found the cancer." The whole situation was absolutely delicious. Despite everything I went through, the feeling of complete vindication when they had to face my cancer-ridden self was incredible. I never ended up going back to work there, of course. I had to file for disability because the next 5 months of my life were week-long hospital stays followed by constant transfusions, checkups, and even a case of sepsis that almost killed me. But I still remember Ryan's face and it brings a smile to my face. The next one is titled Craigslist Revenge. Sure, we have all dealt with idiotic Craigslist sellers out there, but this woman was too greedy not to have this coming to her. I collect vintage road bicycles, of which one showed up on our local Craigslist for $100 being sold by greedy bicycle lady, short GBL. It is an upper entry-level road bike with one of the better English manufacturers of the 1970s. At best, it is worth $300 cleaned, fixed up and perfect. As it is now, $200 to $250 tops. I know a good deal when I see one, so I email GBL with my phone number and tell her I can come by within the hour and buy it. Shortly thereafter, I received this response in my mailbox. Okay, so I now realize that the bike is worth more. I've upped my price to $200. Give me a call if you're interested. It's not as good a deal as before, but it's still a bike I would like to have in my collection. This time I call her to confirm an appointment time. I haven't been talking to her for 30 seconds before I am informed that the price is now $350 based on the latest inquiries she has had, which have been numerous. I mean, I don't mind a bit of friendly competition, but this is ridiculous. Sure, she has a right to getting what the market will offer, but deals cannot be made with sellers that cannot stand behind their word. I ask if she's willing to stand by this price if I commit to driving halfway across town to pick it up right that minute, and she said, no. Lady, I doubt you will find anyone willing to put up with this nonsense. I could have driven across town and find that you have doubled the price by the time I get there. Good day. Edit. I think it should be noted that I'm really not interested in the bike anymore at this point. Vintage road bikes were unusually common in my city at the time of this story, and I knew with time I could put my efforts towards something much nicer. And by the way, I did with the acquisition of 2 chrome Schwinn Paramounts shortly thereafter. Not to mention that my collection was already quite sizable, at the time a fleet of over 15 classic and vintage road and touring bicycles. And yes, I had the n=n+1 syndrome quite bad back then. But back to the story, my last email seemed to end any hope of further discussion, but too many old movies have taught me that the greedy person is the easiest to have fun with. Especially when spare email addresses are close at hand, no longer was it about the bike. Within 10 minutes, GBL had a $500 offer from Mr. A ready to come by, and 5 minutes later Mr. B just had to have the bike for $750. And thus GBL told Mr. A that the price was now $850. So Mr. A confirmed that he would match that offer while Mr. B dropped out. But then Mr. C pops up and says, "We'll buy now, no questions asked, $1,500. And of course, GBL will take Mr. C's offer any day of the week, but Mr. C cannot commit to show up until the weekend, almost a week later. That's fine with her. Mr. A, however, soon gets an email with the new $1,500 price. Mr. A can match it, but Mr. A drops off the face of the earth come his appointment time the next day. So she tries to get Mr. C back, who confirms for that weekend and then drops off the face of the earth too. The day after Mr. C misses his appointment, Mr. A gets back in touch with our greedy bicycle-owning friend, who apologizes for his family emergency. He makes an appointment for the weekend after. And Mr. A misses that appointment too. In the meantime, Mr. B wants to know if she will do his $750 as the ad still appears to be up. And Mr. B also does not show up for his appointment. And thus begins a vicious circle of emails from Bicycle Lady to Mr. A, B and C as she desperately tries to get at least one sucker with more money than brains to her doorstep following 3 weeks of runaround. Of course, nobody ever replies, and by this point, no real buyers from Craigslist are willing to bother with her nonsense either. And so the bike disappears off Craigslist, but almost exactly a year later, GBL posts the bike back up. Same seller name, new pictures, nothing done to improve the bike's condition. The asking price is a flat $500. Thus I emailed her from my original address as myself, just to be a pest. Remember me, lady? When you want to talk about that $200 price again, give me a call. Maybe you will actually get to sell it this time. Rimshot. And the next one is a fantastic malicious compliance story about a coworker, and it is titled "Coworker and I maliciously comply with the owner's demands. Owner loses thousands of dollars." A little over a year ago, I started my first job at a local restaurant. I was 16, making me, at the time, the youngest employee there. Nevertheless, I was determined to show that I was just as good as the older servers and buzzers. Things started out great, I was learning a lot and quickly becoming a solid buzzer. To me, the job was perfect as I felt I was good at it, and working nights fit in with my schedule perfectly. Then, about a week in, I walked in to see, but mostly hear, Jackie, the owner of the restaurant, screaming into her phone. I gather that she is on the phone with the internet provider and trying to get the internet back up before people sit for dinner. Dissatisfied with the customer service, hint foreshadowing, hint hint, she hangs up and asks me to take a look since she knows that I like computers. I head around the bar to the router and modem and see that neither has any lights on, both appear to be completely off. By the way guys, just a quick side note, there's currently a very heavy rainstorm all over Thailand, so if you hear any rain in the background, I apologize. Either way, a proverbial gong goes off in my head and I decide to check the outlet. Turns out the outlet had a built-in surge protector that tripped. I press in the reset button and the internet was up within 5 to 10 minutes. Little did I know, by pressing that button, I had just sold my soul as IT support to this rinky-dink restaurant. In fairness, it was not that bad most of the time. For about 5 months it typically was just, "Have you tried turning it off and on?" and the occasional part replacement. All of the IT stuff I did was going unpaid, which I did not really care about. I knew how to do it, Jackie knew that I could do it, so why wouldn't I do it? What I did care about, however, was how Jackie treated me when I tried to help her. Sometimes she would get oddly defensive and insist she knew how to do a thing when 5 minutes before she had asked me how to do the thing. I also noticed that on weeks where she decided to have an argument, my scheduled hours for the following week went down. She would also withhold pay. I cannot definitely say that there is a relation, but it happened multiple times with the exact same excuses. Also, during this time my buddy Brett was hired. Brett is my age, a grade ahead though, we like similar stuff and we knew each other from our school's robotics team. Around mid-August at the time, about 5 to 6 months in, Jackie has a brilliant plan to buy a brand new camera security system for the restaurant and get yours truly to install it all. When she told me, I was completely shocked. I mean, yeah, I had soldered and wired stuff before, but she's trusting a very expensive system to a kid with no real experience. When I brought up my concerns, Jackie brushed them aside with, "Just document everything you do so you can trace back any mistakes." Not fully convinced, but also not wanting to upset my boss, I, naively, accepted to install the system. I spent the next few days going over wiring schematics and drawing up a master that the whole system would be directly traced by. I may have been stupid enough to accept the job, but I was smart enough to do it right. I got Brad to help me with wiring and installation, and thanks to him we were able to get the system completely running within a few hours between the lunch and dinner rush. The place isn't that big, but there are 4 camera zones, some with multiple cameras to limit blind spots. Here is where the real trouble starts. When we finish the install and triple check all cameras, I tell Jackie that we are done. I then start going through with Jackie to show her how everything works. She starts having trouble with playing back cams since the system she bought was a relatively cheap one and had a poor interface. She started getting very annoyed, and here's the conversation that followed. Paraphrasing a lot. Jackie, "You definitely did something wrong. I cannot work this thing." Me, "There's nothing wrong. Look." I go through again how to play back video. Jackie, "Exactly. You have made it so I cannot control it." Me, "I didn't make the interface. That came with the system." "Just fix it. How hard can it be?" After this continued for a bit, with both of us getting madder and madder, I realized that she thought the way I wired the system affected how to use it. To you and I, that is stupid beyond words, but she was 100% serious, so I decided to go all in as well. Jackie, "I'm going to personally go over everything so I can use it." Me, "Okay, go for it." I pull out all the wiring schematics that I kept in a folder in the office. Here you go. "What is all this?" "It's the complete map of how the cameras are wired. You said to document everything." I see her eyes go wide as she tries to take in everything on the sheets. To an untrained eye, complicated wiring schematics look like a maze with no exit. Me? Oh, and by the way, I quit. I turned around and walked out of the office, leaving her sputtering and screaming. I felt like I was on top of the world. And that is where the story should end, but we still have a bit more. Before I left the restaurant, I had a quick chat with Brett about what happened and warned him that she might try something with him since he helped me. To my surprise, I saw his eyes light up and he told me he would give me a call in a bit. A little later that night I get a call from Brett. Turns out I was right. Jackie tried to pressure him into rewiring the whole damn thing by himself, saying she would fire him just like she had just fired me. Brett was able to convince her to just take the time to learn this setup. Still no idea how he managed that. Brett was always way better at negotiating than I am. He walked her through how to bring up cameras and play back the video, and the camera he chose for the example was the camera in the office, right behind Jackie. Once the video was going and Jackie realized what was going on, she was just a passenger as our entire conversation was played out in front of her. When the playback ended, Brad turned to her and said, "Yeah, I quit too." The final nail in the coffin for Jackie. This was right before Labor Day, a huge time for restaurants, especially where we live. Jackie could not get replacement employees on time and the restaurant tanked badly, missing out on easily thousands of dollars in profits. It managed to stay open until just a little while ago, which reminded me of this glorious memory. Brett and I are still close and he's killing it at college, or at least he was, thanks virus. I don't know where Jackie is now, but I'm assuming she went back to doing what she does best, which is being a damn dumbass. And before we end the video, we will read one last story from r/Petty Revenge. It is titled "Steal My Seat? Deal with My Toddler." So I took the family, husband, kids and 1.5-year-old human wrecking ball to an aquarium and went to see the open ocean feeding. We got there 30 minutes early to snag some good seats, mission accomplished, husband and kids seated, and I ran 2 of the kids to the bathroom. When I came back about 20 minutes before showtime, some random 10 to 12-year-old kid had wedged himself right next to my husband. As my husband stood up to pass me the toddler, the kid scooted down the bench, leaving one tight spot. Awkward, but whatever, I sat down and my husband stood behind us, kids on the floor next to me. Cue my toddler immediately starting to climb on the railing like a caffeinated monkey. I eventually gave him my seat so he could sit and hang on the rail and sat down on the floor next to my other kids. And then the kid tried it again. As soon as I got up, he slid further down the bench like he was going for a gold medal in seat stealing. At that point, I made a decision. Enjoy sitting next to my fully charged toddler. The show starts and my son proceeds to get up, sit down, hang on the railing, rinse and repeat about 4,782 times. The kid is visibly annoyed and I am spiritually thriving. By the way, there was no one behind us, so my toddler's antics were not bothering anyone but him. When my son hopped off the seat for a second, the kid tried to scoot in again and I hit him with a "Excuse me, he's sitting there." He moved. When he tried it again, I said, "You already scooted us off the bench. My son is sitting there." Mom voice activated. There were also no parents in sight the entire time, just me, my chaos goblin, and one very annoyed seat thief. Was it petty? Absolutely. Would I do it again? In a heartbeat. And yeah guys, thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe and I will see you again tomorrow.